Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Japanese Spider-Man, Season 1, Episode 1. So, I think the main reason why I'm just attacking the pilot episode is really because I wanted to do some thorough researching of this character, because I'm not really familiar with it whatsoever. So, because this is like all brand new stuff. We don't go on and have the dual identity of Spider-Man in this world be Peter Parker. Instead, we have a character called Takuya Yamashiro. And he, of course, is to be technically the Spider-Man Peter Parker character. And we have Yamashiro that is to be, instead of a photographer, he is this motorcycle rider. And we end up having some relatives of his being from Planet Spider that had gone on to make their way to Earth because of a battle, because of a war against a nemesis called Professor Monster that has the Iron Cross army. And so we find a man named Garcia, or Garia, my bad. I know I'm going to be butchering some names here, but I'm going to try my best to try to pronounce them in the best way I can. We have Garia, who is to seemingly be the last wielder of the spider bracelet that is to have the spider protector in it, which is the Spider-Man costume. And he is stuck in a cave. And he has been stuck there for supposedly 400 years in Planet Spider time, but not on Earth's years. Because for every 20 years in Planet Spider is to be 1 year on Earth. So we have both Garia and we have both Professor Monster that had stated that they had gone on to battle this great war 400 years ago, but that is really to be on the Planet Spider timeline. Whereas for Earth, we have gone on to have Yamashiro, who is now 20 years old, because we have kind of this very like Superman like story for Yamashiro, where we have Professor Yamashiro, I'm assuming, go on to marry some Earth woman and impregnate her once he gets to Earth. And we go on to have Yamashiro that is to, of course, be 20 by the time that he is to hear the call of his uncle. So, crying out, desperately seeking for revenge, desperately seeking for Marveler, or calling out for his brother, who, when Yamashiro is to show up, I'm assuming because Garia is to, by his time, like, he's been in his cave for a very long time and he's probably gone crazed, to the point of him, like, seeing a younger version of his brother in Yamashiro, and that's why Garia just calls him brother, is what I'm naturally assuming in this episode. So, we have, for this story, we have these two girls that, of course, are Hitomi Sakuma, that is a photographer that seems to be following around Yashiro, and we also have Shinko Yamashiro, that is, of course, Yamashiro's sister. So, and we also have this like little brother that is to kind of also follow around Yamashiro, of which that I like every time I think I was to possibly get the name somewhere of Yamashiro's real little brother. Like, I don't think I quite got it somewhere, so I just kind of gave up. I was like, what exactly is his name? So I just kind of was like, okay, at some point I'll learn it later on. But so, plus it was really hard to like get like the perfect cast list. So like I kind of had to go on and really go in deep and do some real research and go into the Marvel database and kind of find some of this stuff here, but I couldn't find all of it. So that is what it is for whatever goofy reason. So now going into this first episode, I thought that this first episode was really great. I really liked it. Even though you do have to go on and read the entire episode in subtitles, I was like, well, like, I'm going to slow this show really down pretty far so I can make sure that I'm reading everything and I'm getting all the subtitles, and some other people may do the same or may say, no, I'm a really good reader, so F you for having to, like, read this so slowly. I just wanted to make sure that I got everything. I just wanted to make sure that I really understood the story and I didn't want to speed my way through it. So I kind of slowed it down a bit and I really got the images. And so we have, of course, Spider-Man, who, when he turns into Spider-Man via the spider bracelet, goes into putting on the Spider Protector, which is the Spider-Man costume. And we have then Spider-Man that is to go on and have this like spider string that ends up getting shot out, and it's his spider web. And we also have Spider-Man that goes on to do these like net things. I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. So Spider-Man seems to have his own like kind of vehicle, which of course is the Spider Machine GP7, as well as we also have the Marveler that is really just some kind of like floating spacecraft that ends up morphing or transforming into the Leopardon, which of course is what we see here. So both the Spider Machine GP7 and the Leopardon are the things we see here. The Marveler is something that kind of comes in right away, and we have a number of people that's like, oh my god, what is that? So with that said, let's go on to, of course, just kind of go into spoilers about this episode. Because I kind of went on and teed up most of this episode in a very vague-like way. So I think it's about that time to just go into spoilers. So with that said, let's go into the double five of all this. Currently, right now, this show is available, I guess, on Disney Plus. But if not, I went on and just watched the first episode on YouTube somewhere, and I just watched the subtitled version of it. There may exist somewhere some dubbed version of this show, but from where I was to go on and from where I was to watch this, I just watched the subtitled version because I was like, okay, like, and that was also the main reason where I was hesitant about going on into multiple episodes, because I'm like, okay, like, I just wanted to kind of comb through the first episode and just kind of see what this show is really all about. So, with that said, let's go into that double five, because it's about that time, yet again, to of course go into spoiler time. It's about that time to spoil this episode. So, we have, of course, the beginning of this, and we have the intro song. And so, like, the intro song is kind of similar to, like, the Spider-Man does whatever a spider, but, like, it's not the exact same thing. Like, really, we have them talking about, like, dark valleys and, like, all these other kinds of things, but it has, like, it goes on and says its little ditty, and then it says Spider-Man, and then it goes and like Spider-Man. So like Spider-Man is somewhere in the title of the song, but it's not like as catchy as the other song is. It's kind of very different because of course it's a Japanese song. So I thought that that was rather interesting, the change or the difference. So in the beginning of this, we state the time for revenge has come, attack of the Iron Cross Army. So the Iron Cross Army is, of course, with Professor Monster, and we also have the assistant of Professor Monster, who is the Amazonas. And so I was like, all right, like, I'm digging the Amazonas. I was like, all right, like, give me some of that. It was like, this girl was pretty cool. And also, she was like the one who was doing kind of the heavy lifting, where Professor Monster was just kind of in space, just kind of watching on. So we come to find Garia that is calling out for his brother and calling out for the Marveler and desperately wanting to seek out revenge, finally realizing that soon Professor Monster will make his way with the Iron Cross Army and the machine gem. So the machine Bem is what he states. So we have the Marveler that is making its way onto Earth, and we have a number of people notice it in the sky, and they're like, well, hey, what's that? And so the Marveler goes on to make its way to Garia, and then crash lands into this cave. And so we now go to the Yamashiro Astro Archaeological Laboratory, where we have both Shinoku and Hiroshi Yamashiro, that is, of course, Professor Yamashiro. They go on and they are possibly thinking that this is some meteorite, but really they're wanting to, of course, focus on like wanting to go to the site of where this crash landed to inspect it. So we, of course, go on to have Takuya going, and he's at this dirt track, and he's pushing his motorcycle to the limit and going as fast as he possibly can. And so his little brother is watching on as we, of course, go to have Hitomi that is taking pictures of Yamashiro do all these stunts and kind of really putting his bike to the limit. So we have Yamashiro that is to stop dead in his tracks because of course he hears the cries of Garia, and Yamashiro is to hear this like, brother, like come to me, like let's go and get our revenge, and Marveler, and all of this stuff. And Yamashiro's like, what is that? Like, who is saying that? And to the point of Yamashiro is to consistently be like running out to find out who is saying this, like, show yourself, because Yamashiro is getting very annoyed by this and almost thinking that he is possibly close to being crazy, that he is possibly imagining all this in his brain. So we go on to, of course, have Professor Monster talking to Amazonas, Amazonas, and we have her, of course, we have them talk about how it's been 400 years, and it seems that Garia has seemed to have been able to use his telepathy to call upon the Marveler, hence why now Professor Monster is making his way with his ship, with his Iron Cross army, to try and destroy Earth, because both Garia and Professor Monster have gone into hiding, but I guess Professor Monster was to try and go on and build up his army for him to try and put up a bigger threat against Earth. So we, of course, have Professor Monster that is to tell Amazonas to make her way to Earth and also bring along Burkun Ryu. That, of course, is this monster who looks very much like a mechanical lizard that has these like crossbow like weapons and is to kind of have like blasters in his hands, like a very robotic like lizard. And so I was like, okay, this is like a really cool way to like start out the show. Like as if we're almost maybe even like modifying like certain Spider-Man villains to possibly be a like fit in the show for some goofy reason. So Amazonas goes on to make her way onto Earth, and it seems that Amazonas had gone on to become this editor-in-chief on Earth already, and so, like, it seems that the Amazonas had gone on to infiltrate Earth already by being this editor-in-chief, and so she's going on and talking to Hitomi, who is this photographer, and Hitomi had gone on to make pictures of Yamashiro and also the Marveler. And so Professor Monster had gone on to tell Amazonas to try and take out Professor Yamashiro because he thinks, and as well as Amazonas, that Garia is no longer a threat, but Professor Yamashiro might be. So Professor Monster is deciding to have Amazonas to figure out a way to kind of take care of that threat. So we have Hitomi and Shiniko that make their way to Yamashiro while he's kind of fixing up his motorcycle with his younger brother, and both of them go on to state that his race that he's going to be in is canceled because of the pressing matter of the meteorite. And so Yamashiro is like, well, no, like it can't be canceled. Like, I need to win that award. So we have Professor Yamashiro that is to state, it's like, well, hey, like, Yamashiro, don't worry about it. I'm gonna go on and instead I'm gonna have Yaka, or let me pause here for a second. Yamakawa kind of take over, and so you won't have to go on and deal with it. And so we go on to have Shinoku and Hitomi that go on and say that that Yamashiro has been spoiled, and so we go and have Yamashiro that's like, well, hey, like all we really need to focus on is this race. So we have Professor Yamashiro that goes on with Yamakawa, Hitomi, and Shinoko to go to the caves. And so when they make it there, we have the Amazonas who is following behind them. And she, of course, is to release the Bokunri, or Bokun Ryu, to attack these people. So we have Yamashiro that goes on his motorcycle with his younger brother, and they're fixing to go to this race. But then again, we have Yamashiro, as he had gone on to hear the night before, someone calling out to him, to the point of Yamashiro the night before running out to like ask, like, who is this? Where are you? Like, why are you calling to me? So we finally go on to have Yamashiro again hearing this voice, and so Yamashiro takes his younger brother and puts him off to the side, and Yamashiro just desperately needs to run off. So when Yamashiro seems to be able to figure out this voice and can sense where it is, we have Yamashiro that makes it close to the caves. And we all of a sudden have both Shinoko and Hitomi that go on to find Yamashiro and are to tell them that Professor Yamashiro is hurt. So Yamashiro goes off to find Professor Yamashiro, and when he goes on to find him, Professor Yamashiro tells Yamashiro that he was supposed to go on and have this be like his duty to find his brother Garia, but it seems that now that responsibility is left for Yamashiro. And we come to find out that Professor Yamashiro had died because of the monster. So I'm assuming Hiroshi was much younger than his other brother Garia, and so that is why, like, Professor Yamashiro was to be the one to possibly take up Garia's mantle. And I'm like, okay, like, all right, like, I can understand quite a bit of that. So we then go on to, of course, have Yamashiro make his way to Garia, and he all of a sudden is to be attacked by these foot soldiers that are, of course, from the Iron Cross Army. So we have Yamashiro that is having trouble taking down this threat, and we also have Amazonas, who is kind of in the background also, just kind of waiting and kind of picking the fight. So we have Yamashiro that ends up getting attacked so much so that he falls into this cave, and we would assume he would fall to his death. And he had gotten stabbed in the neck by the foot soldiers, and we would have assessed that he was going to die. So Garia ends up finding Yamashiro, and we end up having him go on to use the spider bracelet on Yamashiro to nurse him back to health. Having a spider extract within the spider bracelet help give Yamashiro the Spider-Man power, so that way we can, of course, have Yamashiro live on. But maybe when we had Garia give up his spider bracelet to another. That is, of course, the main reason why now Garia had died in this cave, because that's what happens next. So when Yamashiro wakes up and is to realize that his wounds have all healed, and he's like, I should be dead now. And Garia's like, well, no, like, I gave you the spider bracelet and gave you a spider extract within the spider bracelet to keep you alive. And so Garia goes on to explain that he had fought a battle with Professor Monster 400 years ago, planet Spider time. And so when Garia left planet Spider to then immediately come to Earth, he then goes on to still fight with Professor Monster, and he then gets stuck in a cave where he ends up getting surrounded by poisonous spiders within this cave. So we go on to have Garia, that is to tell Yamashiro his backstory and everything like that. And so Garia then after that is to state that like the Spider-Man powers is in Yamashiro's hands because Garia is about to die. So yeah, Garia does fall to the ground and then becomes dust. And because I'm assuming like the spider bracelet was, or the spider extract and the spider bracelet was the one thing really keeping Garia alive until he can go on and desperately call for someone to assist him with his telepathy. So we go on to have Yamashiro that makes his way from out of this cave and is to go back to his home after the loss of his father. And so Shinoku and Shinoku's brother is going on and watching over Yamashiro, and it seemed that they noticed that he's just kind of laying in his bed and he's just kind of grieving. And so we have Garia that comes to him in a spirit of a spider, and it's to go on and tell Yamashiro, it's like, well, hey, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you just laying around? Like, you need to go on, and you need to become the Spider-Man, and you need to go on and take the spider bracelet that I gave you and put on the spider protector, become the Spider-Man to defend Earth. So we go on to have Yamashiro that becomes the Spider-Man. And yeah, like quite a bit, like the mask part or quite a bit of the way that they kind of do things is kind of goofy, but like the way that they're also like some of the stuff that they do on the show is like, wow, like this is really impressive for what they were trying to accomplish here. So like we have like Spider-Man like legit, like it seems crawling on buildings, and I was like, wow, this looks really good for like the time period that it was done. I was really impressed with some of the stuff that they try to pull off in this show. So we have Yamashiro become Spider-Man, but then all of a sudden he realizes that his family had gone on to like wanted to I just kind of bit my tongue there. wanted to give him food. So this is kind of like the Spider-Man scene where we have like Willem Dafoe and Harry Osborn and Aunt May and everybody. The Osborns, they go into the room, and then Tobey Maguire is on the ceiling. Like, it's this kind of same scene where Spider-Man realizes that he needs to kind of conceal his identity, so he starts crawling on the wall and then is crawling on the ceiling. And so when Yamashiro's brother and sister come to the room, we have of course, Shinoku that asks her brother, it's like, well, like, are you sure that he was in this room? And the little kid goes on to like, yeah, like he was in this room. And so it's like, okay, but like for some reason, I guess he's gone now. So they walk off. So Spider-Man goes on, and of course, is to test his skill. So he goes outside to unleash the spider string and starts swinging. And we start to see him like swing, I guess, through all of these like skyscrapers, and we have him like crawl on these walls to use his power set. And I'm like, all right, like this is really cool. So we go on to have Hitomi that talks to Shinoku and is stating that there is a Professor Fujita that has gone missing, like has to have gone kidnapped. And so Shinoku is to state that this is like a nuclear physicist. And so it's like, okay, like for some reason, we of course have the Iron Cross Army that goes on to steal this professor, I guess, as a bargaining chip to lure Spider-Man out to fight. So we end up having Yamashiro get word of this. So Yamashiro ends up going on to go to this facility that this professor is at. So we go on to have this time around where Spider-Man is going on and pretty well taking out the foot soldiers of the Iron Cross Army. So Spider-Man goes on to kind of fight all of these foot soldiers, and we have moments where he, like, obviously there's like a lot of times when the foot soldiers have to kind of flip for him and like make like Spider-Man look good. So, but there's some goofy attacks that Spider-Man goes on and does that obviously you could tell that the character just kind of backflipped and like made Spider-Man look good. But anyways, so we have Spider-Man decking all these foot soldiers, making his way into the facility. So Amazon S is to have the professor, and we have Spider-Man come into this facility, and he, of course, is to grab the professor, and he then webs all of the, or spider strings all of the foot soldiers into this room. And so Spider-Man grabs the professor and gets him out of the facility and tells him, it's like, Professor, it's like, get away, like run to safety. So the professor leaves, and so we have Spider-Man continuing to spider net a bunch of these foot soldiers to web them all up. And so now Amazon S is to go on and realize that the only thing that she has really left to do here, because all the foot soldiers are now taken away, is to release the Bukun Ryu, which of course is the monster, the kind of half lizard, half machine monster. So we quickly realize that this monster is to go on and become bigger. And so Spider-Man at first tries to go on and defeat it by means of like, well, hey, like how about I use the spider string and just grab onto this monster and see if maybe I can like kind of pull it down or trip it or whatever. And so Spider-Man uses its string to try to grab onto this monster, but it seems that the monster grabs onto the Spider-Man and starts slinging him around. And so Spider-Man is to realize, okay, that failed. So we then have Spider-Man that jumps into his Spider Machine GP7 and realize that he needs to go on to call out for the Marveler. So we have Spider-Man and his Spider Machine fly into the Marveler, and so we then have Spider-Man in this kind of cockpit where he tells the Marveler to change into Leopardon. So we then have the Marveler that changes into Leopardon, and so the first thing that tries to happen is we have the monster that goes on to blast into the Leopardon, and we even have at some points where the Leopardon like catches on fire. I'm like, oh my god! Like the hand of the Leopardon like starts to like catch on fire after all those fireworks. And I'm like, man, this is crazy. Could you just imagine in the early years of like Power Rangers and like all these kind of like Zord kind of shows where you're like the Zord character and you have to go and face off against all of this like fire and all this blast stuff, and you're so freaking worried that you're gonna light on fire at some point, or you're almost probably going to have to be on fire for some goofy reason of the show. Some of these people were really freaking brave in the early on, because man. So Leopardon goes to like take the attack of this monster's crossbow and like other like hand blast weapon. So Leopardon then goes to have this weapon called the Arc Turn. So we all of a sudden have him pull off like this Wonder Woman like move because the yellow piece that we see right here on the top of the guy's head, that's what ends up coming off as this kind of boomerang like attack and swings around, and it hits the monster, and that doesn't seem to do good enough damage. So we desperately have Spider-Man that calls out for the Sword of Vigor, or Vigor. I'm just gonna state it like that. Like I think Vigor sounds cooler. But anyways, we have the Sword of Vigor. Anyways, that comes in as Leopardon is to whip it out. He really whips it out from out of a part of his Zord, and it's to kind of do this move to kind of set up that he's going to attack with his sword. And so we have Leopardon that kind of just chucks this Zord. It hits the monster and it kills it. And so we go on after that like Professor Monster is to go on and be like, dang it, like I guess we now realize that Spider-Man is going to be our greatest threat, our greatest nemesis against the Iron Cross army and the Machine Bem. And so like, yeah, like we're gonna have to go on and really work at trying to take this guy down. And so that's how, in all technicality, the first episode is to end. So with that said, yeah, it only took me 40 minutes for a 20-minute episode. but I had to go on and explain a lot here. I had to go on and help you understand the Japanese Spider-Man show. So hopefully, maybe in other episodes, this may go on and maybe be different, or possibly will be the exact same. And I'll be like, man, I'm taking 48 minutes for a 20-minute episode. But it is what it is. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. Oh, we also had Spider-Man that goes off and is to drive away with the Spider Machine GP7 and talk about how he's going to get the revenge for Planet Spider and for his family and so on and so forth. And like he just kind of rides off into the sunset, and that's when they start to put up the credits. So my bad, I forgot about that one scene. But other than that, I'm gonna go on and get the heck out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.